All right. So I just now received this mail when I was building my next project. So in the database, I'm using MongoDB Atlas, of course, a free tier one, and I got a mail regarding that your connections to your clusters have exceeded your threshold. So what does this exactly means is that the number of client objects which are trying to access my MongoDB has surpassed a particular level. I'm not sure what exactly the number is, but yeah. So I went to that how what this happens and all these happens. So for today's video, we will be discussing the paradigm shift one faces while one tries to move or tries to go from a more MERN stack based app or MERN stack based approach to Next.js or a full stack application like Next.js. And it's very you know not very obvious when you first start to do something with Next. Okay, so I went through some documentations. I went through whether if I'm using some wrong hooks, what is the exact issue. Okay, so I'm a person who tries to learn everything through projects, through doing. I started with basics of Next by documentation, then directly start with the implementation out of it. But the main thing which I'm getting right now, the issue I'm getting right now is the database is being exploited in a way it is being overwhelmed with the number of connections which I'm having right now. Okay, so how would I call this? Okay, so first, so this is the case with I guess almost all the developers who want to migrate from MERN to Next or want to start with Next even. Okay, so now we will just start with what exactly the issue is. Okay, so in the last video talked about what Next exactly is. So Next is a full stack video, so if you want you can go back to the video and check out. We discussed the difference between Next and React. Okay, so what exactly happens is in normal apps or in MERN stack, basically what happens is React is the client or React is the one which is sitting in the front end, and then we have a backend or a API which is more or less Express. In this case, it can be anything, Spring Boot, uh, according to you. Okay, so what happens is when we have a database sitting in the back, let's suppose in this case we have a MongoDB server, Mongo Atlas. So what exactly happens is this particular API is calling database, and then this database is again sending back the response or any query which we demand from the API. Okay, so whenever this server starts or whenever the server is deployed, the first thing which happens is the connection is built. Okay, so whenever we try to have any connection with something called as a Mongo client, which is sitting there, and this is basically responsible to do all the CRUD operations or everything which is demanded by the Mongo application. Okay, but what happens in Next? This is the issue. So what happens in Next? Let's suppose we try to replicate the exact same thing, but now instead of just Express, we have a full stack app setting here. Okay, so now we have a Next server sitting here, and again in Next also we have some we can use it completely as a front end through CSR and then query to some different backend altogether. It again depends according to the use case which you have. We've talked about CSR, SSR, SGR also in previous videos, you can check out there. But in a very layman language, it's completely depends on where your entire business logic is processed, how your end page is made or how your final page is made, and what bundle or what thing exactly is shipped to the client. Okay, so what happens in Next is basically Next is not a backend framework, right? I'm talked about it. It is kind of a front end framework which also gives you the the platform to query your backend or to have a business logic sitting right there. So what happens is every time we call a API in Next.js, instead of having a single connection, we are trying to have altogether a new connection. Okay, so let's just delete this particular arrow. So every time we try to call a new API or a new hit point, or let's suppose a single route is called 10 times, or let's say in this case 5 times, then 5 different Mongo clients are created because we don't, or the Next app doesn't store the instance as such. Okay, this is the case with the full stack apps, and what is a very go after or the very looked onto solution to this is once the response is done, we just simply delete these things away, and then whenever we want a new route or new request comes together, we again establish this connection, get back the response, and again we delete this or close this connection. So this is how the exact next app flow works. And this is the thing which I faced a lot of issues while trying to build my new app. And let's dive into a bit of code now. Okay, so this is a kind of a helper. So inside my API, I'm having a helper where I'm having two functions broadly. One is the connect DB and other is a close DB. So I was trying to, have a persistent client object wherein if I am having a previously connected client or previously instantiated client, then we can use that particular instance also. But this is also giving me an error. And why so? Okay, so what happens is whenever, let's suppose, okay, now in this case, let's suppose I'm having 10 routes maybe. Okay, so my next app is having around, let's for say simply, let's keep it to be 3 in this case. Okay, so this is my first one, my second one, and my third one. Okay, so this can be anything, post, delete, anything. So it can be as simple as getting a request to deleting something or some complex queries altogether. So what happens is in next app, whenever I'm having this particular single helper instance, the client being the client object which I'm trying to access, and the DB being the database which I'm trying to access. These are some objects given by the Mongo client. So what initially I tried to have is to club everything into a single module called as a helper DB. Okay, just a second. So what this helper DB did was that it had two functions. One was for connecting, or let's suppose open DB or open connection, and second one was the close DB function. Okay, so these two functions were more or less responsible to handle the connection request. But what happened is, let's suppose I'm having multiple concurrent connections taking into place while my client is not present. Maybe at particular instance we can have some race conditions, we can have some random arbitrary thread configurations. I'm not still into how this next step works under the hood. Need to go through some really good documentations for that particular purpose. But yeah, more or less what's happening now is that the shared instance which I'm having here for client and DB is not very much tempting for me as of now, because I'm having a check that if the client is not present, then do instantiate a new client and then connect it to it, and then use for your any purpose. But again, it's being uh, quite a headache for me, because modulating a code or trying to instantiate a common object here, so I'm trying to use the something like a Spring Boot bean, wherein we have written a single class and then we try to replicate it here and there. But because of my mindset using Spring Boot and using Node, this video is only the fulfilling a purpose that you have to change the entire mindset or paradigm when you are working with a full stack app like a Next, right? So you should not do these kind of stuff. I know that can be cumbersome, but every time you try to hit some new API or some new route, you have to first have a new connection object and then close that connection client. So this is the only way I've got through right now. So you also have some props, you have some get static prop, you hooks, you have some get server side hooks and all those things. Go through that documentation once, but this video only solves the purpose that you have to shift your paradigm when you are developing a app using Next, while switching from something like MERN or mean stack, because both of them do look same, which I also thought of. But yeah, there is a quite difference when you're trying to build the entire folder structure, and as of now I have not found any good source from wherein I can learn why exactly I am failing to have a single Mongo connection. So what I'm trying to do is that have single connection from Next to my DB, and the moment my request is fulfilled, I'm just deleting this. And even if I'm having some concurrent users, it might be the 10, 15, 20, because I don't think so that I would be having more than that concurrent user on my platform. It would work quite fine. We have something called as Plasma DB and all those things getting into picture once we start with Next. But I personally wanted to make very simple. And again, if I show you the console here, so every time I'm trying to hit my API, I am getting some issues wherein there is some kind of a race condition, not very much confident about what I'm doing right now, but yeah, there is some race condition wherein I'm not creating that object, but in the end now I'm again creating an object and also closing it away. So not using this would also help you a lot. Do not complicate your next apps building it for the first time. Don't try to modulate the code in the first uh, go right away. uh, Try to start working with the basics and then move on to model in code. So I guess you have got through what exactly I was talking about. Why do you receive some extraordinary, overwhelming number of connections to MongoDB when you're using something like Next? So please be very alert when you're doing something like that. And obviously, the quick solution to that is simply just go to a network access. And so just delete all these IPs out there. You can also do this through something like changing your database URL completely. That would also work. Okay. And now I'm trying to access it through Mongo. So sometimes it happens that you're not able to even work with your Mongo Atlas when you're trying to have a next app. So yeah, it's for working completely fine for me on Mongo Atlas. So quick solution is just to change the network access. This would just re-establish the connections, uh, erase out all the existing clients, and then work with really smooth way. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching the video. Keep learning.